That's awesome.
5-0
All right,
is coming
so kind of to get us started here, I will do a download of last week's real quick. We did talk about the upcoming arrival of FAA designating no-fly zones. We talked about what kind of situations that the FPVFC would stand for that are unacceptable to fly. Some of the areas that people kind of brought up were active construction sites, open air concerts, any large gathering of people, animal preserves, national parks. You know, a lot of these are already incorporated into the FAA reauthorization. So there's not a whole lot that I think we kind of broke through on anything. I think the biggest one was open air concerts that kind of people were talking about, and firework displays and whatnot. The other thing we kind of talked about would be, should private citizens and companies be able to apply for a no-fly zone status? And I think that was pretty much a resounding no on that. And with the exception, I think we talked about some, exceptions where companies are developing confidential kind of products where it might become maybe not illegal, but definitely not advised to fly. And some of those areas that we talked about were like down close to me, I've got a Nissan test track, where they're developing their new cars, they're testing them, that kind of thing. And kind of like defense contractors and stuff like that, where it may not be illegal, but it probably wouldn't be in your best interest. And then we talked about the intent behind your flight. And, when you're flying in areas where it might be questionable, a lot of it comes down to the intent behind the flight. Are you actually are you somebody who's going to be, that dreaded word, spying, or are you just there to enjoy the hobby and have fun? So, just keep that kind of stuff in mind. So that's a lot of what we covered last week for anybody who wasn't here. Today, what I'd like to discuss is the safety guidelines. We wrote these back in, I want to say late October, and we kind of hashed them around the group for about a month after that. But I kind of wanted to touch base with people and see what we thought of them. So I'm going to start dropping them in the chat here, not one by one, but in kind of groups, and we'll kind of discuss them. Give me 1 second to drop them in. Hopefully it lets me do that much. All right. So here's the first chunk. First part is registration requirements. So we all know we need to register with the FAA in order to fly legal. This has become a big deal right now, and honestly, I think this probably needs a little bit of revision. This first one. Any operator of an FPV aircraft between 0.55 pounds and 55 pounds, which would be 250 grams and 25 kilograms, must be registered with the FAA per the FAA UAS registration, and the registration number must be present on your aircraft. So right off the bat, I'm going to say must be present on the outside of your aircraft. That ruling just came out, about a month ago. It can't be, for us, it's probably not as important, but it can't be in a battery bay. It can't be blocked off. You can't have to remove a component to see the FAA registration number. So it needs to be somewhere easily visible without having to handle the aircraft very much. And the key reason they did that is for law enforcement or inspector safety. People don't want to have to handle a craft that has the potential to power up and injure them. So anybody disagree with that change? It's one word: present on the outside of your aircraft.
One thing I'd like to do is, if we had it like a general consensus of the way that, or the method that we'd like it applied, because somebody could put a piece of cardboard under their battery and it's or you can actually have like, this is what we think you should do. Like if you're running top mount, then on the bottom you put like a label maker style sticker, just so that way it's something that where
Like a
something.
recommendation of how to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Uh,
this is
Okay.
our approved method as a group, as a CBO. This is what we're putting out.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good. The FAA even has a little a one pager that characterizes that. We can probably copy their work and their they've got, I think it's, recommended or acceptable uh, labeling is a permanent pen, a permanent label, or engraving, I think, and then they have a little graphic. But I think that's a good point to give a little bit of direction, and that this is a recommended way to do it.
Absolutely. I like
Hey,
that.
hey Josh, what channel are you using to drop these in?
The regular FPV Freedom Coalition general chat.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You got it. All right, so we kind of broke up before. We just had a list of our safety guidelines, 1 through however many. I think it was 1 through 10, 1 through 12, something like that. We went back through and we kind of broke them up into sections. So the first section deals with flight preparation, and that's just to clarify. So the first one's going to be before flight, the operator must review and adhere to any TFRs and notices to airmen and adjust planned area of operation accordingly. The one thing you don't want is the president coming through town or any VIP coming through town, and there being TFRs in place, and the Secret Service comes looking for you because you're flying, uh, close by an event of that caliber. The other thing that, obviously there's going to be TFRs in place for wildfires and floods and stuff like that, where first responders need to be able to utilize the airspace for search and rescue or for dealing with the catastrophe. So you definitely want to keep an eye on those. There are tools out there to utilize, and perhaps along the same lines as a registration, we can recommend some of those tools in here. Obviously you would have like Kitty Hawk would be, or the Before You Fly app. Both those would give you some of that information. We can definitely put that in there. Any questions on that one? Clear enough?
It very clear. Have you guys all been trying the different ones? Like I've been using air maps since the last meeting I was in, like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. I mean, I almost feel like we should choose the same thing, like with the registration number and like where to apply it and how, as because we're going to be a CBO, so we might as well have a recommended. Hey, use air maps. It works great because
So right now,
Well,
AirMap is moving out of the United States. I mean, they're still going to probably service the United States, but hello?
really.
yeah, I think their focus is going to be non-U.S., and I think the incorporation of Kitty Hawk into Before You Fly would suggest that Kitty Hawk has won at least a big chunk of the business for Lance in the U.S.
Okay, so
Kitty Hawk,
download
you
the Kitty
say.
Hawk.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Before You Fly is the FAA's app, and it
Yes, and it has incorporated, the latest version incorporates Kitty Hawk.
exactly, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Which would you recommend? Which would you recommend to try next? If I'm
So, Kitty Hawk has their own app. You can give that a shot. Like Dave was saying, the newest version of Before You Fly incorporates Kitty Hawk. I believe that's still being developed to be a little more user friendly. I think they're planning on a complete reboot of Before You Fly. So once that's done, I'm pretty sure that Kitty Hawk and Before You Fly will give you a lot of the same information. It just depends probably on the user experience, because obviously Before You Fly is going to be built up and developed by the FAA with the assistance of Kitty Hawk. So I'm going to try Kitty Hawk probably for the next week. See how it fares, and see what happens with that. Eventually, I'd like to, this is, down the road a bit, so don't get too excited. But I'd like the FPVFC to have their own app, utilizing some version of Kitty Hawk or something similar to it that we can provide to our members.
Not
Nice.
it.
Download it now.
Yeah, I'm actually
Reluctantly.
I know, but hey, it's to keep you safe.
I just deleted air maps and I'm installing Kitty Hawk as we speak. So I'll jump on board and do the same thing that you're doing.
If you guys jump into some of the commercial UAS Facebook groups and social media accounts, a lot of people, probably for the last year or so, have been really not impressed by air maps, and I've used.
Do you use an incredibly high gate on your mic? Because you just cut out.
Yeah, exactly. He just suddenly disappeared.
Uh,
Right
You
after the
guys hear
word I
me now?
use. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so I have used AirMap. I have used Before You Fly. I got different information from each one. One said that I could fly, the other one said I couldn't. So it just really depends. And based on one app, I probably shouldn't have been flying, but based on Before You Fly, I was perfectly okay too. So which one do you choose? Which information? Something that is consistent, I think, is the goal. So I
Choose the
think
one that says you can fly.
yeah, but then you gotta, plausible deniability, and yeah, you don't
You
want to go down
delete
that
the other
road.
one.
Yeah, but nothing's ever truly deleted. Yeah, I think something that's a little more consistent that everybody can kind of agree on, and Kitty Hawk, depending on my usage and a couple other, if you guys want to give it a shot and tell us what you think of it, that can be our recommendation for the time being, as well as Before You Fly, because we don't want to leave that out. We want to, kind of show the FAA that we're behind some of their initiatives if we're going to interface professionally with them.
So another one, I haven't tried it yet, but I hear Altitude Angel talked about a lot online. I don't know if that
Okay.
one's primarily for other countries or not, but something I should look into.
Let me get that in the notes. I'll give it a shot. All right. All right. So any questions on that one before we move on to the next one? Okay. So when a flight is planned to take place outside of Class G airspace or beyond 400 feet above ground level, the operator must submit a request for authorization prior to the operation. So I do, that's still in effect. We still have to contact the air traffic ATC to get authorization. But at the same time, I do know that they are developing a pathway for hobbyists to use Lance, which would be amazing because you get authorization almost immediately. I think it's within like 60 or 90 seconds. But either way, you have to submit a request, and once the hobbyist use of Lance is approved, then we can shift that one towards using Lance. The Lance system is active across the entire United States. So the only places that wouldn't be active at were going to be small regional airports, helipads for like hospitals and whatnot. So you would still have to contact those people if you plan an operation somewhere in those areas. But for your major and mid-range airports, I think Lance is going to be the way to go once that's active. Any thoughts?
Yeah.
Wow, we've got our own
That's
That was
my
very cool.
thoughts.
Somebody's got a new toy.
Oh my goodness.
What is the usage? I'm not familiar with Lance. Is that an app or?
So it's something that is active in apps like AirMap, Kitty Hawk, where if it's basically an authorization system. You go through the app, you put in your flight data, what your planned flight is, when you're going to do it, how high you're going to go, how long you're going to be there, that kind of stuff, and it automatically submits it and it kicks back a response, whether you're authorized or not authorized. So it's meant to be a quick path to getting in the air without having to bug the people at the air traffic controller, get authorization from an airport manager, all that kind of stuff. It's an immediate, yes, you're good to go, or no, you're not. Do something different. So,
Kind of like map,
what's that?
like the air map there.
Yeah,
Correct.
it's actually the Lance system is built into AirMap.
Right.
Okay.
And
okay.
it stands for Low Altitude Authorization and Notification Capability. So AirMap, Kitty Hawk, those are all examples of a Lance. And
They
the
can
FAA
access
is,
it. Yeah.
Yep, the FAA is instituting the system, and it is now, as Josh said, up and running across the United States.
Yep. And I do know, and this is kind of a side note for us in our future app usage or app development, that FAA has every 6 months they will look at applications to incorporate Lance into whatever your app you're developing is. The window just closed, I want to say last week or the week before, for this period, but they're supposed to open up again in 6 months for new people to apply to use that. So, once we are capable of going down that route, that's something we'll want to keep an eye on when those periods are.
I just got a reply. I posted in that local aerial photography group that I mentioned earlier. UAV Forecast is another app. That's another app that they.
Okay.
Sure, if you can use Lance with that, like if you can send outgoing authorization requests, but I'll drop a link in.
Okay.
I'll drop a link in general.
You're awful grumbly tonight, Chapel. What's going on?
I just opened up this Kitty Hawk app, and the first thing I don't like about it makes you choose whether you are flying for fun or flying as a 107. That's one strike.
Yeah, AirMaps does the same thing. It
but you can choose during each flight if it's for fun or if it's for 107 on AirMap. And this, it just asks me the rip. I am not happy.
Ooh, okay, I get what you're saying. So you're telling it right off the bat what you're primarily going to be doing from here on out indefinitely, not like per flight.
Yeah, and that's like a bummer.
Was that Mega Man?
It's just a regular buzzer.
I think I might need a soundboard. Jeez. All right.
You don't.
All right.
Getting a soundboard ranks right up there to me with having to get a transponder for my drone. So,
well, at least we know where you sit, sir. All right. Before a flight, a complete inspection of the FPV aircraft should be conducted to ensure that each and every part is operating properly. This should be a given. This is just a complete safety and ready for operation kind of guideline. Most of us are going to be repairing our own crafts. Most of us are going to be building our own crafts. Well, I won't say most. A good chunk of us, let's put it that way, are going to be building. So we know the ins and outs of our aircrafts. We know when it's ready to fly or when it's not ready to fly. Hopefully you've done most of that stuff on the workbench, and by the time you get out there, you're good to go.
Hopefully that complete inspection is like twirling the propellers with your finger a few times, making sure they're all good, and then you're ready, right? I know that's what I pretty much
Yeah.
do.
Yep.
Okay,
So,
I'm
but
deleting Kitty Hawk.
that
It
was,
wants me to connect to a DJI Phantom.
that's interesting.
There are
There's gotta be
extra
a- there's
features
gotta be
for
a
connecting to
workaround.
a DJI, but you don't have to do that. But if you did have one, then I think it allows you to talk to it more directly or do some integration.
I had a
All
question real
right.
quick.
Let's
I had a
see.
question or a
Uh,
suggestion, I guess.
for this particular one, this is really good for the newcomers to the hobby.
Hey, Josh, could you hear Matt? He had a question.
No, I didn't hear Matt. I think I cut out.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's
What I
okay.
was wondering, just something to add to the before flight. Do we have a pre-flight or a recommended pre-flight checklist?
We do. They're actually posted up on the website.
Okay, excellent. Just something I hadn't seen yet, and I know this is kind of like a quick and dirty, run through. So
No,
I
you're
was
fine. In fact, I was about actually to mention that, where the newcomer, we've got the pre-flight checklist, things to run down on your aircraft before you head out to the field, just to make sure everything's operating properly. Actually, let me pull that up real quick. That way, my internet is being spotty tonight.
Take the lens cap off the camera.
Shh.
How many times have I done that?
I do that
turn
every
on
time.
GoPro. Turn on GoPro is my biggest one. Not turn it off and think it's on.
Yeah.
So on the website are PDFs for downloading, or PDFs for pre-flight checklists. There are several of them. There's a FPV pre-flight checklist. There's a fixed-wing pre-flight checklist. There's a freestyle checklist. There's a racing checklist. There's a group session checklist, and a traveling checklist. What to do? Yeah, buddy. And I created these as kind of informational things to check. The travel ones are useful. If you've ever traveled with drones, there's a couple of things you do need to do. It actually dictates on the checklist what goes on your carry-on and what goes in checked. So, and how to kind of prep those. So, and it also gives your the battery capacity formula on there, because you can only carry a certain amount of watt hours of batteries with you, dependent on the size. So it also kind of pushes you to check for airline restrictions, destination restrictions, all that kind of stuff. So it's a good one to have if you ever travel with your drones. The pre-flight checklist, let me pull that one up. So the FPV, I'm just going to cover one real quick. Obviously, charge your batteries, your goggle batteries, your model batteries, your transmitter batteries. Check your model. Propellers are removed. Inspect for damage, frame damage, standoff damage, wire wear, broken zip ties, battery strap wear. Check all screws and nuts. Model power up initialization, motor test, motor spin freely, motor direction check. Check your transmitter communication. Range check, telemetry check, if you do telemetry. Check your receiver antennas, check your switches. FPV, goggles power up and function, channel check, power check, camera focus, transmit check, check antennas on goggles and model. Install your propellers and make sure and tighten your propeller nuts. Or if you use Popo, make sure they click. And it's got sections on there for pre-flight notes, like if there's, it's just a quick place to jot down, if you've got a pen handy, what the conditions are like, how many people are there at that time of day. Notes for yourself, if you're going to a public park and it's 4:00 in the afternoon, it's probably going to be a little packed with kids and people walking their dogs and that kind of thing. So you can kind of notate the times in which it's busy. Kind of helps you dictate when you're going to hit that spot. Also has post-flight notes. And a little place to log some flight data, like your flight class, whether you're flying micro, mini, X class, that kind of thing. How many people were with you, duration of the event, number of incidents, hopefully that's a 0, nature of incidents, and other information. So it gives you a place to kind of jot some of that stuff down if you so choose. I know not everybody likes a pre-flight checklist, but for the newcomers to the hobby, it gives them a place to start, gives them an idea of what they need to actually get operational.
Can we add one, like the last thing? Maybe not with the last thing in the list, but can we add make it audibly known that you're plugging in?
Sure.
I feel like that. I've seen so many quads go down. I'm sure everybody here has, because somebody plugged in while others were flying and they blew them out of the sky.
Yep, I can add that in. Add announce intention to plug in to power up.
Could we maybe add to that, or use in there coordinate channels before powering up or something? I mean, that's sort of the, if I fly in a group, which isn't that often, but you know, if I do before I plug in, I'm always like, you know, what are people on, so I don't, you know what I mean? Just sort
Yes,
of
they don't blow
eliminates
them out
that
of the
whole
sky.
thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So why don't
actually,
why don't we make sure that we qualify that as video channels as opposed to, so we
Well,
don't.
yeah, both. Yeah.
So actually, one of the things, there's a FPV group session checklist. So, and it goes through that kind of thing. It actually has a place on there for assigning. It has a little chart in there for assigning channels to pilots, which is incredibly useful. I know when I did fly with a large group, they always had a whiteboard with them, and they'd put your name, what channel you're on, that kind of thing. This is an alternative to that, where you can just assign, hey Dan, you're going to be on 5800. Josh is going to be at 5645. Whatever the case may be, you can write it right down in here. So there is that little checklist there that has the assignments as well.
Also coordinating power output levels, like if somebody's flying on 25 milliwatts and somebody's flying, let's say they're on race 1 25 milliwatts, and then somebody's on race 5 and they're flying 800, it doesn't matter, they're on different channels, you're going to get blasted out.
Right. Absolutely. All right, got that in the notes. Thank you. All right, before flight, we did that one. Appropriate fail-safe programming of the FPV aircraft must be in place before any flight. That's a given. If you lose communication with your aircraft, what's it do? Does anybody here have it hover or slowly descend or anything like that?
No.
Please say no. Okay, thank you.
I mean,
I'm sure
for
more
GPS quads, it's return to home, but otherwise it's hold for it's like a 10 value guard time and then drop.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sure
What's
more
that
and more
question
people are
again?
using that the new beta flight feature to return to home thing, whatever. Forget what that's called.
GPS rescue.
Yeah,
it is
GPS
not return
rescue.
GPS rescue.
No, that's the name of it. That's
awesome.
It is GPS rescue. Do not call it return to home, because that implies something that it's not.
right. Yeah, so it's incredible. I'm blown away by the function.
I'll have to test it out. I'll have to throw GPS on one of my quads.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it.
I just run iNav on my GPS quad builds.
There you go.
iNav's actually really good as far as like a graphic user interface and tuning and stuff like that. It's way more in depth than Betaflight.
Cool.
Interesting. I'll have to give it a shot.
You can do true return to home if
Yeah.
you remember
that's
to wait. If you remember to observe the guard time on your GPS.
Huh. To give that a shot. All right. Let me post up the next section here. We're almost through it. Thank you guys. I appreciate all this. Next section deals with during flight. This is half of it. Obviously, first off the bat, obey all USA federal, state, and local laws and regulations regarding small unmanned aircraft systems. That's a given. It needs to be in there. if we're gonna be the ambassadors of the hobby, we need to make sure that we're obeying laws, and that's a pretty big deal. I don't think that could be really any different unless you guys disagree. I'll take that as a no. All right, no FPV flight operations should take place in an area or manner that disrupts or poses a danger to any of the following: emergency response efforts, to include law enforcement action, fire response actions, military actions, unless the operator is actively engaged in the operation with proper clearance from the authorities. Areas where crowds of people gather, to include sporting, musical, or political events. Civil infrastructure, to include power, water, and transportation facilities. If the operator experience, sorry, that's the next one. So, any questions on the no FPV flight operation?
Section B, I think we should add something like with for Cinewhoops and stuff like that. Like, unless, unless done in the safe and manageable way. Because safe and manageable, it wouldn't be flying a 7-inch in a crowd of people, but flying something with ducts that's very protected and a very low chance of injury should something go wrong. Because sin whooping, everybody's starting to do it now. So maybe just put something in there that doesn't leave those people out.
All right, we'll have to look at that. That might take a little finagling. We'll have to kind of hash that out. Yeah.
And we'll want to make sure that these safety guidelines are recreational, and then we can glance at the safe operations over people and at night, which splits the categories and does exactly what Matt is saying, that if you're under 250 grams and shrouded props, you're fine. Of course, you have to have 107, and then definition to category 2 and 3.
That's the thing with like the Nutmeg that I have, the 2-inch. I fly with a 4-cell 1500 or a 5-cell 1000 milliamp hour. The all up weight of this thing is like 600 grams, and it's a 2-inch. So it falls in. Yeah.
You're category 1. Yeah. Or category 2. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Next one, if the operator experiences any technical or safety issue, the aircraft must be landed and inspected. The aircraft cannot return to flight until safe for operation. So obviously any technical issues probably going to knock you out of the air anyway, or dictate that you need to land. And return to flight until safe for operation, that's going to be at the pilot's discretion. There's not a guideline. You can go through a pre-flight checklist to double check it, but that's going to be up to the operator's discretion. Any questions there?
Nope.
All right. Let me get the last little bit here. We are almost there. All right. FPV flights require a visual observer / spotter to be present for the duration of any flight. And the purpose of the visual observer is as follows: to inform the operator of any unexpected person or obstacle, vehicles, animals, civil infrastructure that has entered or is present in the operation area, so that the operator may make the necessary avoidance adjustments. Also, to inform the operator of any aircraft in the area, both model and full scale. The FPV, let me stop there. Any questions on visual observers?
So you must be great. You must be great in a negotiation, because nonverbal communications are a key part of negotiation. So it's like, oh, is this price too high? Oh.
Well, I really want to just hit a button, but I'm going to do it anyway.
No, you're doing it all wrong.
That's
dear.
Awesome. That is hilarious. All right. FPV must be flown within visual line of sight of the visual observer at all times. All right, that's pretty self-explanatory. At the moment, we don't have anything beyond that. The visual observer has to be in direct communication. It cannot be via walkie and you're 6 miles down the road watching a long range fixed wing, taking off for the mountains. You have to be right next to the person who's flying and in direct communication. All right.
Are they still on that
So-
there's no aided visual, like not as
Yes.
far as
No
okay.
aided visual. So you can't use binoculars. You can't use a sighting scope. You can't. Yeah, no. Unfortunately,
No spotter on the cell phone then, huh?
no spotter on a telephone. All right. The other caveat behind this is, and I'll have to double check the language. I believe the visual observer has to be ready to take command of the controls in case of incapacitation of the pilot. I'll have to double check that. Don't quote me on it. It's been a while since I've looked at that.
I don't
All
think
right.
there's any requirement for a visual observer to be a pilot.
You might be right. I'd have to double check. I might be confusing it with something.
I hope the
Otherwise,
paint
I'm
boxes
screwed because I
aren't- yeah.
don't take a pilot with me. So
Yeah, really.
I'd be better off half incapacitated than handing it over to my wife, who would go, "What button do I push?"
Shove all the sticks down. All right. The aircraft must maintain a safe operating distance from people at all times. Avoid flying over or within 25 feet or 8 meters of any persons who are not specifically present for the flight operation. Avoid flying over 25 feet of any ground vehicle that is occupied or under operation. Pretty simple. That's a.
We may want to change the phrasing over or with over within from my engineering background looks like a greater than or less than. So it's like, wait a second.
Okay.
So so it's yeah.
Within
is it that
25 feet. It just needs to
Yeah.
be within 25 feet.
Yeah,
Okay. Let me add that.
and that's twice in both A and B.
Yep. Remove. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Any questions on the safety regulations that we haven't already covered? That is all of them for the FPVFC safety regulations. Safety guidelines, not really.
Just one. On weight limit, is there a size limit?
No, the only for the FAA is putting out only recommendations for 107, and it is category 1 is a weight limit. Category 2 is an energy of 11 foot-pounds, and category 3 is an energy of 25 foot-pounds, kinetic energy.
It's an impact kinetic energy.
Yeah.
Did they ditch the speed limit?
So that hasn't been decided yet. That actually hasn't been put in there, but that is upcoming.
But they don't have to because the energy, the kinetic energy is so silly low that as you calculate, what is it, 1/2 mv squared?
Yeah, something like that. It's like a 600-pound quad can only go like 25 miles an hour.
600 gram, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, or 1 pound, 27 miles an hour. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's not good.
No, this is.
That's
for 107. Yeah, that's for 107 though.
Right.
Hopefully that doesn't roll over to recreational,
right.
but
we're gonna.
Of course, it will.
Yeah, and that's going to be one of our responses is to go back and cite the some of the research that's been done that shows that the FAA and the regulation did not recognize their own research. They cut the kinetic energy by a factor of 10 when they put it in the draft write-up. So we've got till April 5th.
Typo?
Well, that's what they were suggesting.
So the basis of the recommendation on the kinetic energy was based on a piece of debris coming off of a space shuttle / rocket launch. and the data comes from NASA, and it's basically factored on a chunk of steel, basically a dense object that's going to be falling over people, and the difference between that and our quads or our fixed wing is our materials aren't a solid chunk of anything. They deflect, props deflect, arms break. Fixed wing, they're made out of foam that deflects. It doesn't. It spreads the impact out over a larger surface. There's a bunch of variables that it doesn't take into account, as opposed to a chunk of steel falling on your head. So that's where the numbers come from, but they didn't take into account the different ways that UAS are designed and how they impact objects. So, well, I think that's all I have. I do have some other topics that I was going to cover. I honestly didn't anticipate this taking as long as it did, and I apologize if it was boring, but I thank you for the responses. So I will push the rest of our topics to next week, which will cover kind of the ability to assist first responders. It's something that we're looking at. So I think that's a good conversation.
And good discussion on these guidelines. I appreciate the comments and the attendance. This was good.
Anything that I can do for you guys? Anything that we can do for you guys? All right, so I'm going to leave you with keep your eyes peeled on the Facebook, on the Discord, on the Twitter, on the Instagram over the next week or so. We've got some exciting stuff that we're working on behind the scenes, and I hope that you guys will enjoy what you see. And we're excited. Hopefully you guys will get excited once you see it. And I'm going to leave you with that.
And if anybody has any ideas on how to get more community participation into these meetings, that would be great as well.
Absolutely.
And thank you to everybody who did show up.
I got an idea. We have a YouTube channel. What about if we did some sort of a challenge or something, and that way it kind of drums up, people that might not necessarily have jumped over, but then they hear about it, and you run the challenge for a month, and it brings people in.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that a little more. It's absolutely brilliant.
See
Anything that we can do.
See if Bardwell can make a mention.
What's that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can ask Joshua. Yeah, in fact,
yeah, if he makes a mention on his channel, or even his whatever it's called, Discord. Yeah, maybe that'll drum up some.
And we've also and we're also contacting a number of our influencer pilots as well.
Does anybody in here that's affiliated with the FPVFC, do they put the link to the Discord and the link to the website, Facebook, etc., in their YouTube uploads, like down in the?
I don't upload a whole lot of flight videos, but I probably need to. I need to start doing it if I'm going to be pushing this as hard as I can. So that's definitely a suggestion.
I put out like 2 or 3 videos a week, and I fly pretty safe, except for speed, I guess, at that point. But yeah, like I'll start putting it up. I mean, I'll even use like the little, if I can get a PNG negative, like I'll throw the logo on my video.
We've got them, so we'll get them to you. In fact, we probably need to have a branding. We have a style guide for our website. It's kind of an internal thing, but we probably do need to provide a place, Dan, on our website for video resources if we don't already.
I'm making a note right now.
Yeah, I know on one page we had the AVI and a couple of video files, so at least that one video file that we have.
Yep. And we've got logos and all that kind of stuff. So we'll get those ready and we'll get those popped on the website. So, all right, cool. Anything else?
Great suggestions.
Hey, something off topic. Is there any update on Sean? I mean, does anybody have anything outside of the GoFundMe?
I don't. I do know that they posted up a GoFundMe to help fund his recovery. That's the last I've heard.
He's out of the ICU was the last I heard.
Yeah, I don't have anything beyond that, but Godspeed in his recovery. That's it's crazy.
I was going to ask if that was the same guy, but I didn't want to.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah. So, at any rate, thank you for all the comments tonight. Thank you for joining. Please get the word out any way you can. We appreciate it, and we'll deliver the resources you guys need to help us along with that. So, and thank you for the discussion on this stuff. We'll get these updated pretty quickly here, and we'll be rocking. So, hopefully, we'll see you next week.
Hey, before you leave, Cujo, if you're gonna try Kitty Hawk, and that's what I'm trying, somebody posted 2 minutes ago in that same group. Kitty Hawk has Lance authorizations are down, but they're working through them until mid next week. So
okay,
just a heads up on that.
All right, cool, good information.
Interesting.
Do you have a way to do a link that doesn't they call it expire? Yeah.
Oh yeah, let me get you one. I will pull one up right now, and I'll drop it in the channel real quick. Let's see.
Okay, that way I can put it on the website.
You can also, well, I guess, grab the Discord link from our website too. But we haven't really pointed people to that website, so they wouldn't even know.
There you go.
All right.
That's a never expiring link.
I'll also throw a shout out during the live drone show this Sunday.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's one of the reasons why I got all this fancy equipment now.
Well, keep the soundboard coming. We love it. I love it at least. Yes, it is.
Hey, you gotta put the Price is Right losing horn on there. The bum bum ba ba.
We need the more you know sound too, please, if you don't mind.
Oh, that's funny. We also need G.I. Joe knowing it's half the battle. All right, keep it coming, guys. Keep it coming. I will see you later. I have to go help with dinner. So thank you, and feel free to hit me up anytime in Discord or on Facebook. I'll be there.
Excellent.
Alrighty.
Excellent.
Take care.
All right, good night, guys.
Thank you all. Take care.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Later.